yet another episode of On Vijay's playlist, and today we have New Delhi-based singer-songwriter Arnav Maggo, who has just released a beautiful single, Tere Bina, in collaboration with Vasuda Sharma of Aasma fame. Thank you, Arnav, for doing this, and thank you for joining us this afternoon. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, how are you?
As good as you are. Arnav, firstly, tell me about how did this collaboration come in place? Because Vasudha, we know, is such an established name in the music space for almost 2 decades. Um,
Right.
Clearly, this is sort of what dream projects are made of. This is what dream collaborations are made of. When, especially as such a young and emerging artist, you get to collaborate with somebody very seasoned and experienced as Vasudha herself. So, firstly, um, how did you meet and connect with her? How did this whole collaboration happen? Could you tell us from the start?
Yeah, so I actually uh, around I think it's almost been a year now. I've been signed with Turnkey Music, who's my
Yeah,
publisher, which is run by Mr. Atul Churamani.
yeah,
So yeah, so she's also signed to Turnkey. So that's how we got in touch because they recommended that we collaborate and come up with something. So that's how we got in touch, and it was a very smooth process as well. I was in Delhi at the time; she was in Mumbai, and initially we did some, brainstorming online, just through the just like by talking on the phone and coming up with ideas like that. So initially, I had what I usually do is I have a bank of melodies that I make, or just some parts that I come up with, and then I just like make that and put them away, as part of my bank. So I
yeah.
presented a couple of songs that I had. She liked one song in particular. She liked the melody a lot, but I had some placeholder lyrics which were sort of different from the current lyrics, and they were sort of more on, they had like more existential themes and all that. And then she ended up writing the lyrics, the final lyrics, which were more like a love story, like a breakup song. So then once we had the skeleton of the song ready, that's when I came to Mumbai, and we recorded it, and ultimately we got it mixed and mastered. We also made a video for it. So it was a very smooth and a lot of very enjoyable process.
Since you mentioned about you moved to Mumbai to make the song with Vasudha, I believe you are from New Delhi, firstly. So
Mhm.
I see that there's a huge influx of young artists from Delhi who are making the switch to Mumbai,
Mhm.
um, and it's actually very inspiring, and at the same time, it's very commendable also that so many artists are now wanting to explore their possibilities. Um, what made you decide to switch cities right now? Because I believe you have also studied at New York University,
Yeah.
and finance was what you had studied. You had majored in the US before you decided to pursue music. So let's talk about the pursuit of music as a career, and the constant choices that you're making in order to keep up your pursuit.
Yeah, yeah. So I was actually really into music since I was 13 or
Hmm.
14. I'd been playing the guitar a lot and I'd been singing, and I was really it was just like a constant companion throughout my school days, and then after that, even in college. And once I went to college, I got even more into it because I was able to experience a lot of things. Like I was just like attending a lot of gigs, both like small and big, and I took a lot of courses over there, some music and some film courses and all that. And but like when I was in India, I didn't really think of this. I didn't really think about it as a career option because I just thought maybe I don't know, maybe like 10 years ago the scope wasn't that much.
Yeah.
Then when I was in the US, I saw, in India that this whole scene was coming up, and it was very exciting how singer-songwriters were releasing their own songs. and independently, and just putting the songs out there through YouTube and Spotify and all that. And they were gaining a lot of traction, and people were actually listening, and so that was a very exciting thing to me. So while that wasn't the only reason that I moved back, that was definitely a big motivation to me to come back home and then, give it a serious shot. But even over there, I was playing with a lot of local musicians and writing a lot of songs and all that. And but then I recorded the songs properly and released them. I think in 2020 was the first. I released my first song in November 2020.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then I moved back, and since then I think I'm pretty happy with the way that it's going so far.
Since you mentioned about jamming and practicing with local musicians in the States, any major difference between the attitudes and the approaches between the West and between our country that you have observed that you think that you think is something that we can learn from, or is there something that we are doing better that you think we can actually let the world know?
So actually over there I wasn't I think over here I'm pursuing it more in a more professional way.
Uh-huh.
Over there, like a hobby, I was just doing it on the side, and I was playing with people who had a similar objective in mind. They were also doing something else as their main thing.
Hmm.
So I haven't really performed professionally over there
Right.
at bars
No,
and
no,
like
I
that.
don't mean to ask professionally, Arnav. I mean to ask just in the basic attitude, the basic approach towards music. Like, unfortunately, we stay in a country where music is still, to a considerable extent, it is still seen as a side hustle. There's so much focus on getting educated in a different, in a much more technical field, and then say consider music. Music is still, at least in our Indian, as per the Indian perspective, it's still seen as something that, okay, it's something, if you manage to pursue, it's a good thing that you're pursuing your hobby as a career. But the point is
Mhm.
that we still view music as a hobby in
Right, right.
in the Indian setting, whereas it's a fully established business in the West. So I
Mhm.
was I was trying to
Yeah,
come to that, just the approach, the generic approach.
right. Yeah, I mean, I think even over there, it's definitely there's a lot of competition, and it's quite hard to make a career in music over there as well, just because of the amount of, especially in New York City, there are people from all over the world
Hmm.
coming, stream from all over the world. So I think to a large extent, people over there also maybe. I guess maybe it's a bit more mainstream there compared to here, but I think we're also slowly getting to that point. But yeah, I mean, I've seen that even somebody who's not a professional musician, they know, something or the other. They know some instrument, or they know how to sing, or they have that sort of basic knowledge. So I think in schools and all, they are given that sort of education. So that's definitely a difference that I've noticed. Yeah.
So you said that you put out your first single in 2020, and 2020 was the year when the pandemic struck everybody globally. So was
Yeah.
it circumstances that brought you back home, or were you done with your stay were you done with your stay in the US, which is why you shifted base back to India, and that's how eventually you started releasing your music?
Yeah, so actually my plan was to always come back. I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to just like, my plan was to just go there and study there and then come back, because I wanted to do something of my own always. And I think for me, India would have been a better place. And ultimately, I decided in my last couple of years over there that this is what I want to do. And yeah, and so because of the pandemic, I think I was working with a company over there. It was a finance company. So because of the pandemic, I think because we were working from home and all, I think I got some more time to work on music as well, and really think about how I want to release these songs and how I want to record them and all. So that actually did give me a lot of time to think and strategize. So I think maybe that's why I was able to be very productive and just start releasing. And then once I got back home, I was just giving this my full attention. So it just started rolling from there.
Arnav, from what I gather is you are also a hugely self-taught musician also, and much of the credit goes that of that goes to your father. Since Father's Day is around the corner, I think a lot of the best of world music was exposed to you at a very tender age by your father. I
Right.
believe in an interview that I read, where you spoke about how you started listening to Queen, Pink Floyd and the Beatles because your father introduced them to you when you were 13. So do you want to talk about the profound influence that parental guidance has been in shaping your music?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. And I think even today, my dad and my entire family, they are very supportive of it and they're very excited about the music that I release. And they also actively keep track of the streams and, the kind of traction that the songs have been gathering. And they've been like that since the very beginning. So when I was in school, I think it was in sixth grade or seventh grade that we had this subject called Western music. And before that, uh, so before that, I think there was a subject, but a music subject. But when this particular subject got introduced, I really that sort of ignited something in me because I think the first song that they taught us was a song by Pink Floyd. I think it was Comfortably Numb or something. And that's something that really, maybe I didn't understand what it was, but that's something that really excited me and attracted me. And then I went back home and I told my dad about it. And so he said that, I have this collection of artists and cassettes and CDs and all that. And he introduced me to the Beatles and Guns N' Roses and Queen and Pink Floyd and all that. And so I started going through all those cassettes. And one thing that really caught my attention was the guitar parts. Like that's something that really fascinated me. So I picked up the guitar because of that. And I think it was just that I was so passionate about listening to those songs and trying to play them. I was just able to pick up things on my own just by, I mean, I guess people shouldn't normally do this. They should have a proper way of learning where they, start with the basics and all that. But I learned the basic chords and everything, but then I completely just, I directly just sort of started picking up songs. And that's what formed my base. I would just go on YouTube and search how to play Sweet Child O' Mine or how to play some song by Metallica. And so that's what built my base. And I think it was just the dedication that I would just sit at home and practice over and over again, that I was able to pick it up very easily, very quickly. And then I started getting into other aspects of it as well. I started listening to the lyrics and I started paying attention to the whole atmosphere of the songs and the message behind the songs and everything. And that happened eventually. That happened also kind of slowly throughout my years in school. Like every year in school had a different set of bands that I was listening to. I had different phases. Earlier I was more into rock and all that, and then I got into slower stuff. um yeah, I think it's been a very rewarding journey, just like internal journey.
Well, and Arnav, then like you mentioned that so much of the music that you are now doing is self-taught. Uh, First of all, that's really commendable if so much of the music that you make is all self-taught, because um, I used to always ask this to a lot of musicians, and I've even asked this to dancers especially, that I can understand if dancers are trying to, learn the art of dancing by watching a couple of videos on YouTube. There's so many out there. In fact, I believe even Nora Fateh is a self-taught dancer. She hasn't really obtained formal training. Um, in your case, when it comes to singing, uh, what are the challenges that one could also face? Because I'm sure without a formal set of instructions, you can never really tell, as a layman, as a novice, you can never really judge as to what you're learning, how much of merit lies in it, or is this a correct thing that I'm doing? Like you said, you kept practicing upon it, and that's how you have been perfecting it, over the months or over the years. But how do you keep that sense of judgment that, okay, what I'm learning or what I have, what I am actually seeing in front of me
Mm.
is something that holds merit, that holds ground.
Yeah. So I think with the guitar, um, it was I was able to do it because with the guitar, you are able to see what the person is playing and how, like on, if you go on YouTube or whatever, and you type some songs lesson or anything, any guitar tutorial, you're able to see what they're doing, the kind of how they're moving their hands and all that. But I think with vocals, it's all very internal. So I think with vocals especially, you should start with. I mean, I did sing on my own initially as well, but I think a better way to do it is to start learning and actually be mentored by somebody, because you don't know, you can't see what's going on internally, what muscles you're engaging. It's based on a lot of, it's very feeling based, and the way that they teach you is also like that they make you do certain exercises, and it's just like muscle memory building up. And one other thing that's very important is that it's very easy to also maybe damage something if you're just doing it by yourself. That's something that doesn't that's not that big of an issue if you're doing it on an external instrument, but the voice is, it's like your vocal cords are the instrument, so you have to know how to use it well. So I think with vocals especially, I would recommend everyone that they start with somebody, a mentor. And even with the guitar, I think I was able to do it, but you have to just figure out everything on your own. And if you have somebody else who can help you with all that, then maybe that's a bit better. But I think to really be able to successfully teach yourself something, you have to have that sort of determination, because
Yeah.
there is a lot of hit and trial, and there's a lot of failing, and you feel like giving up, because obviously it's a hard thing to pick up the guitar initially, so yeah. So that's what I feel about it.
Because I mean, frankly, Arnav, today, quite a few people, I'm sure even you might repeatedly be stumbling upon some of them on Instagram, or or just in general. I think a lot of at least self-taught guitarists begin with a ukulele now. It's like now the ukulele is the instrument everybody is resorting to when they just want
Mm.
something to accompany their singing on, it's like the go-to instrument that everybody picks up, and suddenly they think that they can start playing the strings. But
Mm.
guitar playing is so much more than that. And I think it's very valid that we are having this conversation, Arnav, because like you rightly said, um, only if you have sheer determination to learn something will you be able to tell,
Mm.
between being self-taught and
Yeah,
between knowing that you actually need some sort of
yeah.
mentorship.
And there's one more thing that I want to say about that. If you're being self-taught,
Mhm.
you're also just able to shape your. That's one good thing about it. You're able to shape your own, work according to your taste and work according to what you want. And if you're working with somebody else, that might be challenged a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's I think one big advantage that I definitely had.
So, Arnav, when you moved back to India from the US a little before the pandemic happened, and
Mhm.
a little before you decided to finally put out your own music, I'm sure it must have been, there must have been a lot of back and forth that you must have deliberated with yourself, because first of all, the challenges were pretty much there at large. People could not meet
Mhm.
each other. Uh, there was no sense of connect at all in the initial months of the lockdown. So
Mhm.
what encouraged you to put out your first song or first single? Because your own resources were limited, where everything that you were going to put into your music was all self-learned.
Yeah.
how did you reach that place of conviction where you said that, okay, I'm going to let me do this and see how it works out?
Yeah. No, actually, I'd been having this sort of internal battle or internal
Yeah.
back and forth for a very long time. Even when I was in college, I was just trying to figure out how can I make this work. I want to do something more serious with music. I don't just want it to be a hobby. I want it to be something more than that. Maybe even if it's a passion project. But I don't want it to be like I'm just doing this on the weekends or just doing it once in a while. So that's something that I'd been trying to figure out, but I wasn't really getting an answer. In college, I didn't really get an answer. And then when I started working, I was trying out different things. And that's why even in the US, I was a part of a band. And that was a more rock focused band. And so even with them, I was trying to figure out, okay, how do we want to do this? How do we put out an album? And how can we actually make this work? Because I have this job right now, and ultimately my goal is to just completely transition to this. But how will that happen? So I wasn't really able to figure it out. But I think I did find an answer when I saw uh, everything that was happening back home. That just sort of kind of gave me a lot of motivation, because I saw there were people who were just like, as I said, they were releasing music on their own, and they were getting and people were actually connecting. So yeah, and I think mostly my music making process uh, is quite. Though I wasn't really bothered by not being able to collaborate with people and like that, because a lot of it is I just like listen to music a lot. I'm mostly just listening to music all the time, and so I always have ideas. I have this database in my mind of the music that I've heard, and something or the other, every time I pick up the guitar, something or the other just comes out, and it's all very like, it's a very sort of a personal process. So I'm very happy just writing, doing everything on my own. And even the songs that I've written, uh, I obviously, the acoustic part I write, the lyrics and everything I write. And then even when I go into the studio, I have an arrangement in mind as well, that this is the sort of vibe that I want. And then later on it gets mixed and mastered, and then it gets released. So I'm okay with just doing it all solo as well. That's so it's like a very sort of a personal process, if you know what I mean.
Well, I must say it's commendable then, Arna, because that really speaks highly about how dedicated and how true have been to your craft. Just going by your track list so far, that you have really put in your heart and soul into this, and clearly you are, in the true sense of the term, you're truly an independent musician. You're self-taught. You're very instinctive, and I think that's what reflects in your music. Before we sign off, Arnav, I just want to quickly ask, how do you look at how the perception in general has turned towards, in favor of independent artists at large so much just during the pandemic? Because I have always emphasized in my interviews in the last 1.5 years that I view the pandemic as a golden phase, a sheer moment of reckoning for independent artists in general. How do you view that?
uh, like the pandemic specifically, or the
The pandemic specifically, because I feel that the discoverability of young
Mhm.
artists has happened more. There's been a complete paradigm shift in the taste of listeners at large, at what kind of music are they listening to. There are more
Right,
footfalls now
right.
at the live shows now that they've resumed. So how do you look at that?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. So during that time, I think people were able to get through it because they were consuming all this art, be it movies or music. So I think that's one of the reasons that music was really able to flourish during that time. And actually, I also experienced that. I released this song called "Aaj Chale Hum Kahin." It's Yeah, so I wrote it kind of before the pandemic, and my concept was a bit different. My concept was that so the song is basically about having been stuck in a situation that you don't want to be any in anymore, and then ultimately wanting to get out of it. So basically, in the verses, I talk about being in a city and in a very monotonous city, which just like follows the same patterns every day. And then the chorus, "Aa Chale Hum Kahin," is about like "Aa Chale Hum Kahin Badalon ke Kareeb." So basically, like uh, going closer to nature and doing what naturally comes to you. So my idea was that I was doing something I didn't want to do, and I was gravitating towards something else. So that's what my thing was. But then I think I released it in February 2021,
Yeah.
and a lot of people were able to relate to it because they thought, because of the pandemic, they were in a situation like that, and they wanted to escape it. And that's, I think, something that's very beautiful as well, because people interpreted it in a different way. Everyone had their own story around it. It could also be about a relationship that you're in that is not serving you anymore, or anything. So yeah, I mean, I also personally experienced that. My, like, at least this song, that was able to do quite well, because I think it helped people in some way or the other during the pandemic.
Fantastic, because Arnav, I really think that when one listens to your songs, one can clearly make out how so much of the songwriting, so much of the composition is actually stemming from a very personal space, where the experiences that you're trying to speak about in these songs, it's all lived in, it's all very personal, and it's all very internalized also to a certain extent. Thank you so much once again, Arnav, for talking to us on this episode of On VJ's Playlist. And your music, like I said, is very intuitive. It's very instinctive, and it's 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 actually to a certain extent, I could say, a breath of fresh air, because we want more distinctive voices and compositions like this. And I think we are all here for that. Thank you so much once again, Arnav, and all the very best for all the wonderful music you're about to give us.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.